Alright, this is the bike that I took to New York City, and I've made a ton of changes to it since that time, and the sun's about to go down here. It's like 8:30, and I thought I would just start from back to front on both sides just to document everything I've done, just because I was just sitting out here eating my dinner, and I was like, damn, I just did another like quick adjustment to one of the mud guards that I'll explain in here in a sec. And I was like, man, this bike is like totally different than how it was originally. So I'm gonna start at the seat post. So the bike originally came with a carbon fiber seat post, and I'm not a fan of carbon fiber as a seat post material for no real reason other than like unfounded skepticism and worry. So I do have an aluminum seat post that I switched it out with. I already had that, so I took it from another bike and put it on here. Got the rear mud guard, which has been great. It's the summer right now, so it's raining all the time. This is the second rear wheel for this bike. The first one, the bearings in the hub exploded, either because I over-tightened them or whatever might have been the case, but ultimately it was making this horrible noise. And then one day it was so bad that I had to stop my ride and go switch out bikes. And later that day I took my little magnet tool inside the bearing race and took out all the metal flakes and the destroyed cages that were holding the bearings. And so this rear wheel is new, and probably only has a couple, maybe a few hundred miles on it now, but so far so good. Most recently, this is probably the most exciting thing. So I recently recabled the bike, so brake and gear cable, and I actually ended up doing the rear derailleur and rear brake twice, because I switched from 105 here on the back to Tiagra. So I still have 105 for the front derailleur, and so that means, obviously my shifters, I switched those out too. So I have on the rear derailleur, I have a Tiagra 10-speed, and then on the front derailleur, I have a 105 11-speed, technically. I mean, it's not really doing much, so 10-speed and 11-speed are pretty much interchangeable at that level. So, I've got the Tiagra here, and it's 11 up to 32, I believe, which the 105 cassette that I had was 11-speed, but it was only, 10 to 28 or whatever the spread is. So I geared it down a ton. I have a long cage Tiagra derailleur on here now, and it really has altered my rides a lot in a really good way. It's made it to where, obviously it's easier to go uphill, and there's a lot of hills here in Georgia, and so I have not missed that closer spread with the old cassette. Here, got a custom chain slap stopper, which is just a bit of an old tire, Continental Ultra Sport 2, that I still have pieces of and harvest from occasionally. Moving forward, so this bike came with some Praxis chain rings that I think were 5236. And again, I'm not a fan of mashing that hard. So thankfully, it has 110 BCD. So I took I had another FSA crankset, and thankfully it had the same BCD, and it was a 5034, and so I was able to put a 5034 on there. But then after the New York trip, I really wish I had had some lower gears, and so I was able to find this front chain ring from, what's that cheap brand? Oh, Originate. So this is a 46 tooth front chain ring from Originate that's got a 110 BCD, and that's been great too. So, I don't cross chain as a rule, but the idea of being able to do 46-32 instead of 50-28 is pretty awesome. Definitely digging that. The bottom bracket's still the original, and I had to buy actually a bottom bracket press because when I was hunting noises, I wasn't sure if the bottom bracket was like toast, so I ended up being able to kind of tap it out with a wooden mallet and reapply it, take all the seals off the bearings and stuff and throw some fresh grease in there. So that's situated now again that's sounding good. I'm happy with the bottom bracket. I still wish it was like the Shimano style, threaded bottom brackets, like the what's it called, the Pinarello Dogmas. I think one of their specifications is that their bottom brackets use the Shimano Holotech 2, which I really, really wish was the case for this bike, because that would really make it the perfect machine for me, because it's so easily serviced and and replaced. This one is not so easily replaced, and the internal gearing as well doesn't really do do me any favors if I get a mechanical involving a gear cable out on the road. Unless it's a brake cable, I'm pretty much fucked. So it takes a lot of time and special tools and concentration to recable all this stuff. I have it down pretty well now because I've done it twice in the past couple weeks. So I could probably do it again in like less than an hour, but it's still not preferable to externally housed gearing, or housing for the external gear cables. I would prefer that, but I don't know. I wanted this bike because of the disc brakes, and it was in my price point, and it was what I got at the time. So moving on, I do keep these bags on here all the time, and I actually see a little zip tie that seems to have gotten stuck in here. Let's keep that out. A little sip of beer. Okay, so got the bottle cages, not much to report there. Got the frame bag, love this bag. It never comes off the bike. I do switch out the bags in the front pretty regularly. Right now I've got two 40-ounce crushers from the spindle. This is a spindle frame bag. This never comes off. This always stays on the bike. So yeah, as you can see, bad wrap job here. This is a 10-speed Tiagra shifter up here in the front, so I'm a fan of durability and ease of servicing, which doesn't really apply to what I'm about to say, but I don't mind having mismatched components. So have the Tiagra here, as you can see, and then over here the 105, as you can see, yeah, and the rubber on the outside is slightly different. This one is like a sort of like a true black, whereas this one is like more of a gray. It's kind of subtle. I mean, snobs would definitely recognize it pretty quick. Cockpit area. I got my Garmin 820 here, switched from the Wahoo. I'm doing these rides now. Ooh, I'll have to mention the fork in a minute. Doing these rides right now that require me to be able to use my map, my map function, and the Wahoo was just, I love almost everything about the Wahoo, but the map function for it just leaves a lot to be desired. Mosquitoes are starting to come out now. So I recently switched back to the Garmin 820. I used to have a Garmin 810, which is what I switched from when I went to the Wahoo, but for what I need now, the Garmin is the best. Have my light here. It's not currently where it would normally sit because I had the bike upside down a second ago. And my bell. This bell has been great, for greeting people, warning people, to when I'm listening to music, I'll sort of act out the songs with the bell as well, rhythmically. And so, like I said, I need to mention the fork. So the bike originally came with, it was all carbon frame, carbon fork. But I cracked the fork on the steerer tube. I really, really, really hate carbon steerer tubes because their compression plugs are so bad when it comes to actually holding the bearings in place. The way I ride is pretty aggressive and non-standard, so my headset was coming loose all the time, which is dangerous and stupid. So I actually got this fork when I was in Athens, I guess last winter, because the Surly fork that was on here before, the fork that I actually ended up riding to New York with, I broke that fork somehow. One of the legs, the lower legs, like after the fork rakes out, it broke, just basically snapped off. It was right at the end of the ride. It was very fortuitous that it would happen right there, like the most possibly convenient time. And so we were in Athens and went to a couple bike shops and found this fork. And this is an aluminum fork with a, I guess, aluminum steer tube, and it's been great so far. More beer. So, just now, I put these water bottle cages on because a group of friends, and I are planning on doing a double century next week. And it's in the summer. It's going to be July 4th weekend. And on my rides recently, I definitely have noticed that it would be highly beneficial if I had more than just 2 water bottles. So now I can hold 4. I've got these on both sides. It has one bolt boss, and so I used just a pipe clamp, a worm clamp, for the upper to hold the whole thing in place. And recently, I had just been starting to think that it would be cool if I could lengthen the mud guard so that it would come over the top of my wheel, so that when it rains, because it's raining like every day in the afternoon now, keep a little bit of the spatter from coming back up on me, like in the cockpit area. And so when I was just putting these water bottle guards on, I noticed that the bottom of my mud guard was broken, and that's most likely because I hit this thing with my foot almost every day, almost every second. Like if I come to a intersection and I'm doing a track stand or whatever, the likelihood that I'm going to hit this with my foot is basically 100%. And so bending that back and forth a million times a day, finally it just broke off. And so I took the broken part and fastened it here with 2 zip ties by drilling out holes. I doubt you'll be able to see this, but there are 2 holes in here that hold the old back part now to this front part, and so I'm pretty stoked on that. Also just added a carabiner here to my 40-ounce crusher so that I can put my gloves there, let them dry as I ride. So this is also a different wheel. Obviously this fork is a quick release. The bike came with both wheels were through axles, but I haven't gotten a wheel to replace. Well, I haven't gotten a fork with a through axle for the front since I took the original carbon fork off. So go ahead and turn this thing around, finish up the tour before the sun sets. Just a second while I get this thing situated. Talk about the brakes a little bit. So we got the seat, got the mud guard. So, okay, yeah, this bike came with TRP spires, which I have never managed to get to feel good. So when I got the bike, I was hopeful that the TRPs that I would get on it would be new and improved, because this bike does have the flat mount standard for its brakes. So I thought maybe, they did redesign the caliper to fit on the flat mount, so maybe it'll be different. It wasn't, so I ended up getting these, I think they're like Shimano Sora level mechanical disc brake calipers, and the back one's decent. It definitely doesn't lock the wheel up, but it's way better than that fucking Spire. I hate TRP Spires. I've never had a good one, and I don't know what it is. And people tell me that you have to have compressionless housing, and I just think that's all bullshit. It's crazy, because the best set of mechanical disc brakes I've ever had were a really cheap pair of Tektro Aries ones that came on my first mountain bike that was like less than $400, and both front and back Tektro Aries brakes would stop me on a dime. I could endo if I wanted to, and so again, I just got like a fucking drawer full of TRPs. So Shimano caliper, Avid BB7 rear disc. The TRP discs aren't any better than the calipers, so I got a bunch of those too. Hit me up if you want some. So moving on, Nothing much to say here. Got my mini pump. This is a cheap one from Performance, just their in-house Spin Doctor brand, but it's been working really well. I had a Lenski, or is that what it is? Lenski's a bike frame manufacturer, but Lycan, I don't know. I had something that looked like it said Lenski on it. It was expensive. It was a purchase out of desperation from a local bike shop. I needed a frame pump, and that was like the cheapest one they had, and it recently bit the dust in a weird way. I don't really know how it broke the way that it did, but it broke, and I already had this, and I've had to use this several times. I've gotten a slew of flats recently, just stuff in the road. Typically after it rains, all the shit will, water flows from high to low points, and so when it's finding its lowest point, there will be like a bunch of sediment that kind of accumulates in a specific spot, and so in that sediment there's typically road things that are washed into that area as well. So you go through a little patch of like sand basically, but unbeknownst to you, in that sand there's staples, there's screws, all manner of stuff that just is begging to go through your tires, and that's happened a couple times. Had a nail earlier this week, and I had a staple yesterday. So I'm pretty sold on these Continental Ultra Sports, the 28mm variety, or Continental Grand Sport race. In fact, they've been great tires. I love the dimple system that these tires have that show you how much wear they have on them. I don't want to guess. In my life, I'm always trying to erase ambiguity, and so I don't ever want to guess if it's time for it to be replaced. I don't want to have to find out the hard way because it explodes, which still could happen for sure, but the dimples system at least gives you an idea of where the tire's sitting. So moving forward again, got that 105 front derailleur shifter, my 40-ounce crusher, got the cockpit all set up the way I was talking about. Got my what's it called? The back end of my mudguard affixed to the front now. Another Continental. Like I said, this is the different wheel. I don't even remember. I think this is the wheel that came off of my charge plug, that the frame of which I destroyed and is now prominently displayed trophy in my bike room. I got my other water bottle cage mount. Again, with these hose clamps, I cut off the ends where it extended out with the excess clamp, and it left some pretty sharp edges, so I put some like little rubber bands that I made out of old tubes, just to kind of protect the water bottle that will be sitting here from getting cut by those sharp edges, and to also protect me. And I also have now two extra rubber bands on the bike in case I ever need them. Plus I have these hose clamps if I ever need those too. So, in a pinch I could figure something out if I needed some sort of binding thing that went beyond zip ties. When I was originally putting this mudguard on the bike, it kept slipping all the time because of the way that I ride, and so I had to figure out a way to actually fix it so that it would not slip. So I actually have it on here zip tied. I have the rubber band style bindings that came with it. I also have it electrical taped, and back here it kept slipping all the time, so I drilled some holes here, and then I put some zip ties in as well, which are kind of hard to see, but maybe, yeah, so this thing can no longer move at all. Before, these are like convertible, this is a convertible mudguard, and so you could like move this plastic part up or down on these little rails so that it would fit your bike, but that became more of a crux than a benefit, so I was able to permanently affix those with these zip ties. And so all that leaves us with the front brake, which is actually very good. It's the Avid BB7s up here in the front, with a Pro Max rotor, and this thing will definitely stop me on a dime. Yeah, not much else to say. I am excited for my ride tomorrow because, as I mentioned, I'm always hitting this mudguard with my foot, and so now that that part is gone, I'm going to be very curious to see what that feels like now, because obviously you can see the proximity here. It looks like there could still be some definite pedal slash shoe strike, but the fact that I'm now missing like 7 inches that used to extend down below the guard, I'm excited to see if that means that I can now track stand a little bit more freely, because there definitely been many times when I go to like from a red light, go to continue my ride, and my foot gets all kind of caught up and fucked up, and I almost kind of fall off my bike. I mean, not really. I mean, I'm track standing, so I'm pretty good at balancing, but it feels clumsy. And so this is a pretty fortuitous incident. Oh, got a little baby coming out. Hey, Egg. You wanna be in a videotape? Egg. Hey, baby. Anyway, so that's the bike. Definitely a far cry from the video I posted about a year ago when I had it, but I would say much improved. The bike actually would be a much better tool now to get to New York. There was so much climbing through Virginia, and with all the extra weight, I didn't do myself any favors by having, I guess, 3428 being my lowest gear. It wasn't bad. Obviously, it was doable. I got there, but you know, I have these extra parts laying around. I haven't really spent much money on this bike to upgrade it, which, you know, a lot of these things aren't really upgrades. They're actually like downgrades slash weight ups. Like, I've added a lot of weight to this bike. You know, those water bottle cages add weight. Switching out carbon components for alloy ones adds weight, obviously. So, you know, I have a different philosophy. Thankfully, I ride by myself for the most part, so I don't have a bunch of people telling me shit about my stuff. I just go out and do what I do, and, you know, don't have to worry about repercussions or opinions or anything like that getting in the way of my fun. So it's getting pretty dark now. Guess I'll go ahead and stop this here. The camera can't even focus. It's getting to be that dark. But anyway, it was just a serene evening. I'm trying to see if I can. I guess I can't flip the thing. I mowed the grass today and stuff, so the backyard's looking pretty nice, and I was out here drinking a beer and eating a hamburger. I think my sister's over there. Lauren! I'll leave it there.